There is a deep longing within us, a constant urge to keep the mind busy. From the moment we wake until the moment we lay down, thoughts flood in without pause, plans, worries, judgments, memories, fantasies. The mind's endless activity seems to be the default state of being. But what if you didn't have to think all the time? What if the mind, powerful as it is, could be allowed to rest, not as an escape, but as a conscious choice? A return to the present moment. You see, thinking is a tool. It serves us well when it is purposeful, when it helps us navigate the outer world. Yet when it becomes a compulsive noise, it disconnects us from the deepest reality, the stillness beneath the thoughts, the space where true peace resides. You don't have to fill every moment with thought. There is a vast dimension of consciousness beyond thinking, a silent presence that is awake, aware, and untouched by the fluctuations of the mind. When you stop identifying so completely with your thoughts, you begin to notice a quiet space inside you, an inner stillness. This is not something you create. It is always there, like the sky behind the clouds. Thinking is a tool, not your entire identity. This simple yet profound insight is often overlooked in the hustle of modern life, where the mind is treated as both the driver and the essence of who we are. From early childhood, we are conditioned to believe that our thoughts define us, that the constant stream of ideas, memories, plans, worries, and judgments is what makes up the totality of our being. We mistakenly identify with the mental noise as if it were our very self. But this identification is a misconception that leads to unnecessary suffering, anxiety, and confusion. The mind is indeed a remarkable instrument. It enables us to solve problems, learn new skills, create art, communicate with others, and navigate the complexities of daily life. Thinking allows us to plan for the future, analyze past experiences, and make decisions. It is essential for survival and for functioning effectively in the world. Yet the mind itself is not who we are. It is a process, a function, a tool that can be used wisely or misused compulsively. When we begin to see the mind as a tool rather than the totality of our being, it opens the door to a different way of experiencing ourselves and the world. We recognize that thinking is something that happens, but it does not exhaust the entirety of our consciousness. There is a deeper dimension within us, a spacious, silent awareness that observes the mind's activity without being entangled in it. This awareness is the ground of our true identity. Most people are unaware of this awareness because they are so deeply absorbed in their thoughts. The mind is often on autopilot, generating thoughts incessantly, many of which are repetitive, anxious, or unhelpful. We think about what happened yesterday, what might happen tomorrow, what others think of us, and countless other concerns that keep us locked in a mental loop. This identification with thought creates a false sense of self, story we tell ourselves about who we are. This story might be about our job, our relationships, our achievements, or our failures, but it is still just a narrative constructed by the mind. Recognizing thinking as a tool also means understanding its limits. Thinking is linear, sequential, and bound by time. It moves from past to future, but rarely rests fully in the present moment. The present moment is where life actually unfolds, yet the mind tends to drag us away from it. When we identify completely with thinking, we lose touch with the here and now. We live in a state of constant distraction, and even when we appear to be doing something, our minds may be elsewhere, lost in thought. This over-identification with thinking also leads to what could be called mental noises, a ceaseless chatter that can overwhelm and exhaust us. When we believe that our thoughts are the essence of who we are, we become prisoners of our own minds, Anxiety, stress, and confusion often arise because we are trying to control or solve every problem through thinking alone, without ever allowing the mind to rest. By seeing the mind as a tool, we can begin to use it intentionally rather than being used by it unconsciously. We learn to observe our thoughts as they come and go without immediately reacting or identifying with them. This is not about suppressing thoughts or denying them. Rather, it is about cultivating a different relationship with them, one of awareness and presence. When you realize that thinking is a tool, you also become aware that there is a part of you that is always watching the mind. This watcher is the silent presence, the pure awareness that is untouched by the content of thoughts. This awareness is not created by the mind, it simply is. It is the space in which thinking occurs, like the sky in which clouds appear and disappear. The clouds are temporary and ever-changing, but the sky remains vast and unchanging. Understanding that thinking is not your entire identity frees you from the tyranny of constant mental activity. It allows you to experience moments of stillness and peace, even amidst the business of life. You come to know that you are not the mind's chatter, not the voice that criticizes or worries, but the awareness that holds it all. This shift in perception has profound implications. When you see the mind as a tool, you can decide when to engage it and when to let it rest. You can choose to focus your thinking on what serves your highest good and let go of unnecessary rumination. You can return your attention to the present moment and connect with the silence that exists beyond thought. The mind's true function is to serve you, not to control you. When you reclaim this power, you experience a greater sense of freedom, clarity, and inner peace. You begin to live more fully in the present, appreciating the richness of life without the constant interference of mental noise. You find that the quality of your experience changes dramatically, not because external circumstances have shifted, but because your relationship with your own mind has transformed. This insight is not merely intellectual, it is experiential. It arises naturally when you practice observing your thoughts with gentle curiosity and without judgment. You start to notice patterns of thinking that no longer serve you, and you create space around them. This space allows for a deeper connection to yourself and to the world. Ultimately, the realization that thinking is a tool, not your entire identity, invites you into a new way of being. It encourages you to rest in the stillness beyond thought, to recognize the presence that witnesses your mind, and to live from a place of awareness rather than constant mental chatter. It is a path toward freedom, peace, and a fuller experience of life. You don't have to fill every moment with thoughts. This idea challenges a deeply ingrained habit in human nature, our tendency to constantly occupy our minds with one thought after another, rarely allowing silence or stillness to settle within us. In our fast-paced world filled with endless stimulation from technology, social interactions, and the demands of everyday life, thinking has become almost synonymous with being alive. We feel restless or uncomfortable when our minds are quiet, as if silence means something is missing or wrong. But this is not the truth of who we are. From a young age, we learn to think as a way to make sense of the world. It becomes the default activity of the mind, and many people assume that if the mind is not actively engaged in thinking, something is wrong, there must be a problem to solve or an idea to develop. We forget that our minds, like any tool, need rest, and that the absence of thought does not mean emptiness or lack, but rather presence and fullness in a different sense. To fill every moment with thoughts is to live under the illusion that thought is the only way to experience reality. When the mind is constantly busy, it distracts us from the deeper experience of being. We become so entangled in mental narratives about the past or the future that we miss the richness of the present moment. The habit of non-stop thinking often leads to anxiety, stress, and fatigue because the mind is never given a chance to slow down and reset. It runs on autopilot, and we feel compelled to keep up, believing that to stop thinking means to stop functioning. This belief limits our capacity to experience life fully. In truth, moments without active thinking are opportunities to connect more deeply with ourselves and the world around us. These moments open a door to a different quality of consciousness, one that is not conditioned by mental activity, but is aware, peaceful, and alive. In silence, the mind's usual chatter quiets down, and we become more attuned to the subtle sensations of the body, the flow of the breath, and the sounds and sights of our environment. This presence is often overshadowed by mental noise, but is always accessible. Many spiritual teachings point to this state of non-thinking as the doorway to awakening. It is in the gaps between thoughts that we experience the true nature of awareness. These gaps are not voids, but spaces of possibility, creativity, and deep peace. When we stop filling every moment with thought, we begin to live from a place of presence rather than reaction. This presence allows us to respond to life with clarity and calm rather than from habitual patterns of worry or distraction. The compulsion to think all the time often arises from fear of being alone with oneself, fear of silence, or fear of facing emotions that are uncomfortable. Yet, when we courageously allow moments without thought, we find that silence is not empty or threatening. Instead, it reveals a vast inner landscape that is richer and more expansive than the noisy mind could ever convey. The mind is like a restless child seeking constant entertainment, but the deeper self is like a still lake, reflecting clarity and calm. Learning to be comfortable with moments without thinking requires practice. It means allowing yourself to experience stillness even when your mind protests or pulls you back into habitual thinking. It means observing thoughts as they arise without immediately jumping on them or trying to solve or fix something. This observation creates space between you and the thinking process, and in that space, the mind's grip loosens. In everyday life, this can be as simple as pausing for a few seconds to notice your breath or the sensations in your body before reacting to a situation. These brief moments without thought accumulate and create a sense of groundedness and presence. Over time, you begin to notice how often your mind was unnecessarily busy, and you gain the ability to choose when to engage it and when to rest it. You don't have to fill every moment with thoughts, because your true self is not limited to the thinking mind. There is a presence within you that exists beyond thought, a silent watcher that is aware of the mind's activity, but not defined by it. This presence is the essence of who you are, unchanging, peaceful, and deeply connected to life itself. By embracing moments without thought, you nurture a different kind of intelligence, one that is intuitive, creative, and deeply connected to the flow of life. This intelligence arises not from constant mental effort, but from stillness and openness. It allows insights and solutions to emerge naturally, without force or struggle. The belief that you must always think also overlooks the fact that many of the mind's thoughts are repetitive and unproductive. They often keep you trapped in loops of worry, regret, or anticipation. Allowing space without thought interrupts these loops and frees you from mental patterns that drain your energy and distract you from what truly matters. In moments without thinking, you reconnect with the simplicity of being. You realize that life is not a problem to be solved or a series of tasks to be completed, but a continuous unfolding that can be experienced fully only when the mind is quiet enough to perceive it. The world reveals itself differently when you are not caught up in thought. Colors become more vivid, sounds more resonant, and relationships more alive. This shift does not require you to abandon thinking altogether. Thinking is necessary and valuable, but it invites you to see thinking as just one aspect of your experience, not the whole. You begin to appreciate the power of presence and the wisdom of silence. You discover that sometimes the most profound answers come not from thinking harder, but from allowing the mind to rest and listening deeply to the stillness within. True peace lies in the stillness beneath the mind's noise. This stillness is not something distant or abstract. It is always present, waiting quietly beneath the surface of our restless thoughts and emotions. Yet, most of the time, it remains unnoticed because our attention is so absorbed by the continuous chatter of the mind. The mind is like a river flowing with countless thoughts, concerns, judgments, and desires, and we tend to identify so strongly with this flow that we believe it to be the totality of our experience. But beneath that river of mental activity, there is a calm, silent ground, a stillness that is unchanging and peaceful. The mind's noise is often mistaken for life itself. We think that to be alive is to be thinking, analyzing, planning, and reacting. This assumption makes us equate peace with the absence of external conflict or the resolution of problems. But true peace is something far deeper and more fundamental. It is not dependent on circumstances or on the outcomes of our thoughts. True peace is a quality of presence that arises when the mind is no longer dominant or distracted. When the mind is noisy, we experience inner turmoil, restlessness, and tension. Thoughts may be repetitive or conflicting, creating confusion and anxiety. In this state, peace feels elusive because the mind keeps pulling us away from the present moment, back into stories about the past or worries about the future. The noise masks the quietness that is always there. Like clouds covering the sun, we struggle to find peace externally through achievements, relationships, or possessions, without realizing that peace is an inner dimension that cannot be found outside of ourselves. The stillness beneath the mind's noise is the space of pure awareness, the observer that watches thoughts come and go without attachment or resistance. This stillness is always accessible, but it requires a shift in attention to recognize it. Instead of identifying with the mind's activity, we learn to step back and become aware of the space in which thoughts arise. In doing so, we discover that this space is vast, open, and free from disturbance. This stillness is not a void or emptiness, but a fullness, a presence that is calm and serene. It is the foundation of our true nature, unchanging and eternal. When we touch the stillness, the turbulent waves of the mind begin to subside, and a profound sense of peace emerges naturally. This peace does not depend on eliminating thoughts, but on changing our relationship to them. Most people resist stillness because they equate it with inactivity or boredom. However, stillness is the source of creativity, insight, and clarity. It is from this silent space that the deepest understanding arises, not from the fragmented and often reactive thinking of the busy mind. When we allow ourselves to rest in stillness, we open to a wisdom that is beyond intellectual reasoning. The experience of stillness also reveals the interconnectedness of all things. When the mind's noise quiets down, the boundaries between self and other soften. We begin to sense the flow of life as a whole, a continuous movement that includes and transcends individual thoughts and identities. In this awareness, Peace is not just an individual state, but a universal quality that connects us to everything around us. Stillness beneath the mind's noise can be found in simple moments, pausing to feel the breath, noticing the sensations in the body, or simply being present with what is without judgment or resistance. These moments remind us that peace is always available, even in the midst of activity or challenge. The stillness is not separate from life, it is life itself in its purest form. To cultivate this stillness, it is essential to practice presence. Presence means bringing your attention fully to the here and now, without distraction or mental commentary. It means observing thoughts as they arise, but not getting caught up in their content. Over time, this practice deepens and the stillness becomes more accessible and sustained. The stillness beneath the mind's noise also transforms how we relate to our thoughts. Instead of being driven by compulsive thinking, we learn to use the mind consciously and skillfully. Thoughts become like clouds passing through the sky of awareness. They come, they move on, but they do not define or disturb the essential calm beneath. This transformation is not about suppressing the mind, but about awakening to the larger reality that includes the mind, but is not limited to it. It is a shift from identification with form, the ever-changing thoughts and feelings, to identification with the formless presence in which these forms appear. In this presence, peace is natural and effortless. As we begin to experience this stillness more deeply, we notice that it permeates every aspect of our lives. Even when the mind is active, the undercurrent of peace remains, like a quiet river flowing beneath the surface of the turbulent waves. This peaceful undercurrent provides stability and resilience, allowing us to face life's challenges with grace and equanimity. The stillness beneath the mind's noise invites us to live from a place of inner calm rather than reactive agitation. It teaches us that peace is not something to be achieved in the future, but something to be discovered in the present moment. This discovery transforms our relationship with ourselves, others, and the world, revealing a life that is more joyful, compassionate, and meaningful. Awareness is the silent presence beyond thinking. This presence is not created by the mind, nor is it dependent on thoughts, emotions, or external circumstances. It simply is an ever-present dimension of consciousness that underlies and transcends all mental activity. Most people live their lives completely identified with their thoughts, believing that the ceaseless flow of thinking is who they are. But beneath this mental activity lies a still and silent awareness that observes without judgment, without resistance, and without becoming entangled in the content of the mind. To understand awareness as the silent presence beyond thinking is to realize that you are not your thoughts. Thoughts come and go like waves on the surface of an ocean, but the ocean itself remains vast, deep, and unchanging. Awareness is like the ocean, the boundless space in which thoughts arise, exist briefly, and then dissolve. When you identify fully with your mind, you are caught in the waves and believe that the fluctuations of thought define your identity. But when you recognize yourself as awareness, you begin to see the waves for what they are, temporary phenomena that do not disturb the essence of who you are. This silent presence is often overshadowed by the mind's noise, because the mind tends to dominate our attention. It pulls us into stories, worries, plans, and judgments, distracting us from the deeper reality of awareness. Yet, the moment you shift your attention away from thinking and rest it gently on the simple fact of being aware, a profound transformation occurs. You experience a space of quietude and peace that is not dependent on the mind's activity. This space is always accessible, regardless of the external situation or the thoughts swirling in your head. Awareness is not a concept to be grasped intellectually, it is an experience to be directly known. You can begin to sense this presence by bringing your attention inward and noticing the gap between thoughts. Between one thought ending and another beginning, there is a subtle silence, a pause, a space that is not empty but full of presence. This gap is where awareness reveals itself most clearly. By resting your attention in this space without forcing or controlling it, you begin to awaken to the silent presence that is always there. Living from awareness rather than from constant thinking leads to a profound inner freedom. When you are identified with your thoughts, you are subject to their fluctuations, your mood rises and falls, your sense of self becomes unstable, and you are easily disturbed by external events. But when you recognize yourself as awareness, you realize that your true self is untouched by the content of the mind. You become the observer who can watch thoughts, emotions, and sensations without being overwhelmed or defined by them. This shift in perspective creates a new relationship with the mind. Thinking remains a valuable and necessary tool for navigating the world, but it no longer controls or limits you. Instead, you use the mind consciously and skillfully, engaging with thoughts when needed and allowing them to rest when not. Awareness becomes the foundation from which all mental activity arises and subsides. Like the sky in which clouds appear and disappear, the silent presence of awareness also fosters a deep sense of compassion and connection. When you are aware beyond thinking, you are not separated by the stories and judgments that the mind constructs. You experience a sense of unity with yourself, others, and the natural world. This unity is not an intellectual idea, but a felt reality that transforms how you relate to life. You become more present, patient, and understanding, responding to situations with clarity rather than reactivity. Awareness transcends time and space as well. While the mind is concerned with past memories and future plans, awareness dwells fully in the present moment. It is timeless and infinite, beyond the boundaries of the physical body and the limitations of personal identity. When you rest in awareness, you connect with a deeper dimension of existence that is both intimate and vast, personal and universal. This realization does not come through effort or striving, but through surrender and acceptance. Trying to grasp or control awareness with the mind only reinforces identification with thinking. Instead, you soften your attention, let go of resistance, and allow the silent presence to reveal itself naturally. Awareness is always here, but it becomes visible only when the mind quiets down and stops trying to dominate your experience. The practice of witnessing thoughts and emotions without attachment cultivates this awareness. Rather than getting caught up in mental narratives or emotional reactions, you observe them as passing phenomena. This witnessing creates distance between you and the mind's content, revealing the presence that watches without judgment or preference. Over time, this presence becomes more stable and accessible. Even in challenging circumstances, awareness as the silent presence beyond thinking also holds the key to deep healing and transformation. Many forms of suffering arise from identification with painful thoughts and emotions. When you recognize yourself as awareness, you realize that these painful states are temporary clouds passing through the vast sky of consciousness. This realization softens the grip of suffering and opens space for peace and acceptance. In daily life, awareness manifests as mindfulness, being fully present with whatever arises without distraction or judgment. It allows you to experience life more richly and authentically, appreciating each moment as it is rather than through the filter of mental commentary This presence enhances creativity, intuition, and a sense of ease, revealing the beauty and depth of ordinary experience. The silent presence beyond thinking is the foundation of spiritual awakening and inner freedom. It invites you to live from a place of clarity and peace that is not dependent on external conditions or mental activity. As you deepen your connection to this awareness, you discover a life lived with greater authenticity, joy, and harmony, rooted in the timeless essence of your being. The constant chatter of the mind creates a barrier between you and the richness of life. When your mind is overwhelmed with incessant thinking, it becomes difficult to experience life in its fullness because you are trapped inside mental patterns that limit perception and connection. The mind, with its repetitive loops and endless judgments, acts like a filter that distorts reality, making it hard to see things clearly or to be fully present. This ceaseless mental activity consumes energy and attention, leaving little room for genuine engagement with the world or with your own inner experience. Living in a state of non-stop thinking often means living on autopilot. Your mind runs habitual stories and concerns, sometimes focusing on past regrets or future anxieties, rarely resting in the present. This pattern creates a sense of separation from life, as if you are observing from a distance rather than participating fully. The richness of sensory experience, the colors, sounds, tastes, and textures of life fades into the background, overshadowed by the mind's relentless focus on concepts and worries. When the mind dominates, life feels fragmented and mechanical, disconnected from the flow and spontaneity that make existence vibrant. This mental overload can lead to exhaustion and burnout. The energy required to maintain constant thinking drains your vitality, leaving you feeling fatigued even when you haven't engaged in physical labor. The mind's activity demands continuous stimulation, yet this stimulation rarely satisfies the deeper hunger for meaning and peace. Instead, it often amplifies stress and restlessness, creating a cycle that is difficult to break. The more you try to control or solve problems through thinking alone, the more tangled and overwhelmed the mind becomes. However, when you allow yourself to step back from the incessant mental noise, a different kind of experience emerges, one marked by clarity, openness, and ease. Without the constant barrage of thoughts, your perception sharpens and you begin to see situations and yourself more clearly. This clarity arises naturally when the mind is no longer clouded by overthinking, allowing intuition and insight to surface. You start to realize that many of the problems created or magnified by thought are not as pressing or real as they seemed. Reducing mental noise creates space for deeper listening, not just to external sounds, but to the subtle inner guidance that comes from a quieter mind. When the mind is still, you can hear the wisdom of your body, your emotions, and your deeper self. This inner guidance is often drowned out by the chatter of thoughts, but it holds answers that thinking alone cannot provide. Trusting this intuitive knowing leads to more harmonious and effective decisions, grounded in a fuller awareness of the present moment. The absence of constant thinking also invites creativity to flow more freely. When the mind is not stuck in habitual patterns or fixated on problems, it opens to new possibilities and fresh perspectives. Creative inspiration often arises in the gaps between thoughts, in moments of stillness and openness. By allowing mental silence, you create fertile ground for ideas to emerge naturally without force or struggle. This creative space is essential not only for artistic endeavors, but for problem solving and innovation in all areas of life. Moreover, letting go of non-stop thinking fosters greater emotional balance. Many emotional disturbances are rooted in repetitive mental narratives, ruminating on hurts, fears, or desires. When you stop feeding these narratives with constant thought, their intensity diminishes. Emotional states become less reactive and more stable, allowing you to respond to situations with calmness and clarity rather than impulsiveness or anxiety. This emotional regulation comes from the presence that is free from identification with the mind's restless activity. The practice of reducing mental noise is not about suppressing thoughts or becoming passive. It is about changing your relationship to thinking, learning to observe thoughts without becoming entangled in them. This shift creates a spaciousness in the mind where thoughts come and go naturally without gripping or defining your experience. In this space, you regain a sense of freedom and choice in how you use your mental energy. Techniques such as mindful breathing, meditation, or simply pausing to notice the present moment can help cultivate this state of reduced mental noise. These practices train the mind to settle and become more aware of its own activity. Over time, the habit of non-stop thinking loosens its hold, and you find it easier to rest in silence and stillness. This process enhances your ability to live with presence, attentiveness, and peace. Reducing mental noise also improves relationships. When you are not caught up in your own thoughts, you can listen more deeply and be fully present with others. This presence fosters genuine connection, empathy, and understanding. It moves communication beyond surface-level exchanges into a realm of shared awareness and compassion. In this state, interactions become more meaningful and enriching, free from the distractions of a busy mind. The reduction of mental noise creates an inner environment where the true essence of life can be experienced. Life is not just about doing or thinking, it is about being aware, being present, and being connected to the flow of existence. When mental noise subsides, you reconnect with this essence, discovering a wellspring of peace, joy, and vitality that is always available beneath the surface of thought. This shift in experience transforms how you navigate challenges and uncertainties. Without the burden of constant mental noise, you approach difficulties with greater resilience and clarity. You no longer react out of fear or confusion, but respond from a centered place of awareness. This grounded response brings a deeper sense of empowerment and freedom, enabling you to face life's complexities with confidence and grace. Ultimately, reducing mental noise invites you to live more authentically and fully. It is an invitation to step out of the habitual patterns of the mind and enter into the present moment with openness and curiosity. In this presence, life unfolds with greater ease and beauty, and you discover the profound truth that you do not have to think all the time to be fully alive. The practice of embracing silence cultivates a profound inner calm that becomes the foundation for a balanced life. Silence is not merely the absence of external noise, it is a state of being that arises when the mind quiets and the heart opens. In a world filled with constant stimulation and information overload, silence offers a refuge, a place where the restless mind can rest and the true nature of being can be experienced. When you make space for silence in your life, you invite a deep stillness that nurtures clarity, peace, and insight. Silence has a transformative power that penetrates beyond the surface of everyday experience. It allows you to step out of the endless loop of mental chatter and to connect with a deeper reality that is always present but often overlooked. This deeper reality is the essence of who you are, beyond the transient thoughts, emotions, and roles you identify with. In silence, you encounter the unchanging presence that underlies all phenomena, a presence that is vast, peaceful, and alive. One of the key aspects of silence is its ability to reveal the nature of thoughts themselves. In the quiet space, you begin to see thoughts not as solid or permanent entities, but as passing events in consciousness. This perspective diminishes the power of thought to control and overwhelm you. Instead of being caught in a tide of compulsive thinking, you learn to observe thoughts with detachment, recognizing them as temporary and often repetitive patterns. This detachment does not mean indifference. Rather, it is a clear and gentle witnessing that creates space for freedom. Embracing silence also deepens your connection to the present moment. When the mind slows down and the noise fades, you become more attuned to the here and now. The past and future lose their grip, and life reveals itself in its immediacy and vibrancy. This presence brings a richness to ordinary experience, a heightened awareness of sounds, sensations, colors, and feelings that are often missed when the mind is busy. In silence, the world seems to breathe with you, and you feel part of a larger unfolding. Silence nurtures healing on many levels. It calms the nervous system, reduces stress, and fosters emotional balance. When you create regular space for silence, you allow accumulated tension and mental clutter to dissolve. This healing effect extends to the subtle realms of energy and consciousness, clearing blockages and restoring flow. Many spiritual traditions emphasize silence as a pathway to awakening and transformation because it clears the way for deeper insight and inner peace. In relationships, silence plays a vital role as well. It creates a space where genuine listening and presence can arise. When you share moments of silence with others, communication transcends words and becomes a deeper exchange of energy and understanding. Silence allows conflicts to settle and emotions to be felt without immediate reaction. It invites patience and compassion, providing a foundation for more authentic and meaningful connections. The practice of silence also enhances creativity and intuition. When the mind is quiet, the creative impulse emerges naturally and effortlessly. Ideas arise from the depths of awareness rather than from forced mental effort. Intuition becomes clearer, guiding you in ways that pure reasoning cannot. Silence is the fertile ground from which inspiration springs, enabling you to approach life's challenges and opportunities with fresh perspective and originality. Cultivating silence is a discipline that requires intention and consistency. It is not about escaping life or avoiding problems, but about creating a balanced relationship with your inner world, setting aside moments each day to be silent, whether through meditation, mindful breathing, or simply sitting quietly, builds the capacity to return to stillness amidst activity. Over time, this practice deepens, and silence becomes not just a temporary respite, but a continuous presence throughout your daily life. Silence invites humility and surrender. It teaches that you do not have to control or figure out everything with your mind. Instead, it encourages trust in the unfolding of life and the wisdom of the present moment. This surrender is not passive resignation, but an active openness to what is free from resistance and judgment. In this openness, you discover a profound freedom, the freedom to be without needing to constantly do or think. The quality of silence also reshapes your experience of time. In silence, the usual rush and pressure of modern life soften, and you enter a timeless dimension where moments expand and deepen. This experience reveals that time is not just a linear sequence, but a living presence that contains the past, present, and future. Living with this sense of timelessness reduces anxiety and cultivates a more relaxed and spacious approach to life. Furthermore, silence connects you to the mystery of existence. It is the space where questions arise and dissolve, where certainty fades into wonder. In silence, You touch the sacredness that permeates all life, a sacredness beyond words and concepts. This encounter invites reverence and awe, reminding you of your place within the vast web of being. Ultimately, the practice of embracing silence leads to an integration of body, mind, and spirit. It brings balance to the restless mental activity, calming the emotional turbulence, and grounding you in the present moment. This integration reveals a deeper wholeness, a harmony that supports well-being and inner strength. As silence becomes a natural part of your life, it transforms how you move through the world. You carry a sense of calm and presence that influences your thoughts, actions, and relationships. This presence is like a silent beacon, guiding you through the complexities of life with grace and ease. In this way, silence is not just a practice but a way of being, a way of living that honors the stillness at the heart of existence.